Story 1. I made many people in my high school take pictures with a plastic fork. I told them it was for a school project, but it was not. I just thought it would be funny. I still have that laptop with an entire folder filled with random students holding forks. Story 2. I smoked what I called paper joints in my bedroom, which were literally rolled up loose leaf paper. Story 3. My mom gave me a permanent wave and it was awful. It looked like an afro on a little white girl's head. So I told her to cut all the permanent wave off. I ended up with a very boyish hairstyle. The kids at school called me Fred for the whole year. Story 4. I liked Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer. I had my mom cut my hair like Vanilla Ice's and had her make me some hammer pants. I was a farmer's son from a rural town of 500 people. Story 5. Loved the band Orgy so much in 7th grade but did not know what the word meant. I wrote the band name on everything. Bedroom furniture, school notebooks, everywhere. Story 6. I got really into vampires to the point where I used to pretend I was one. In school, I thought I was so cool and edgy when I asked people what blood type they were. I wish I could punch my younger self. Story 7. Somehow, I convinced my internet boyfriend when I was 13 to meet me at summer camp. I can't believe his parents allowed this. The camp was about 3 states away from him, and his parents let him attend a random camp on a lake. He actually had to fly in an airplane. When we were at summer camp together, we said about 4 words to each other. I cringe and also laugh hysterically when I remember this amazing story of a mid-1990s America online chat room relationship that luckily did not end in my death. Story 8. At 13, I had a 16-year-old boyfriend. He wanted to move faster than I was comfortable with, so I knew I needed to end the relationship. I was a shy, awkward emo kid. I changed my Microsoft Network profile picture to a screenshot from My Chemical Romance's I Don't Love You music video with the letters I Don't Love You over the top and waited for him to ask about it. He did. It worked. But I am not proud of that. Story 9. In 7th grade, in the mid-1990s, my best friend called my crush and told him I had been in a terrible car accident and was in the hospital. I listened on the other line to see how he would react. Story 10. I styled my long hair with half a bottle of hair gel and half a bottle of hairspray every morning. I created about 30 individual spikes. The process took over an hour. Story 11. Go around our small town with friends and a digital camera, pose for pictures, heavily edit them on PicMonkey, and upload to an album on Facebook with a creative title like lyrics to a song or roar. Story 12. A boy I liked did not want to go out with me because he did not get permission from God. So I sat in my bedroom, listening to a song called Not Pretty Enough, while I watched myself cry in the mirror. Story 13. When I was about 11, I overheard my crush saying that he liked me. I wrote a love letter to him after that, saying we should meet at a local park, kiss, and do other things. I also suggested I bring marshmallows we could roast. So, I walked with my friend to his house and put the letter in his mailbox. The next morning, I was pulled into the principal's office. My mom was sitting there crying, and he and his mom were in the room. Apparently, he never got the letter because his mother read it first. I wanted to die. It was so embarrassing. Everyone in that room had read the letter by that point. Even the police were there. I ended up being moved to a different classroom because it was just too awkward, only to be reunited in the same advanced class in our next school. The shame was real. Story 14. I, like many American theater students in middle and early high school, did in fact publicly attempt an English accent. Story 15. Wore Playboy bunny shirts and necklaces when I was about 12. Why no one said it was inappropriate is beyond me. Story 16. One of the most attractive girls in school invited me over to teach her piano while she was home alone. As I was teaching her, she became flirty and told me how she liked me. I said, "Guess you don't want me to actually teach you piano. Maybe I should go." It was only later that I realized what I had done, and I still think about it 15 years later, reflecting on how innocent and naive I was. Story 17. Wearing a leather jacket and putting gel in my hair as if it were the late 1950s, but it was actually 2001. Story 18. I wrote song lyrics in ballpoint pen all over the plastic parts of my Converse shoes. I was groomed on Omegle and Kick. Story 19. I engaged in a private video call with my girlfriend. Her mother had monitoring software installed on her computer. Story 20. I used to be so proud of being a fan of Japanese animation. I used a Japanese name on my Facebook, wrote my Facebook statuses in Japanese using Google Translate, and made fun of people who don't watch anime. I had anime characters as my profile pictures. I am not even Japanese. Story 21. So many things. One that takes the cake is telling a girl I liked that I spoke French. Problem was, she actually did. So, when it came time to speak French, I just let out a series of sounds that a 1940s cartoon Cajun man might make. I was cringing so badly in the moment, and I am cringing now. Story 22. I was obnoxiously loud. I chose it as an identity of, I do not care what you think. But really I was just annoying and inconsiderate. Story 23. I was participating in a gift exchange game where everyone steals presents from each other at a youth group church event. I was an extremely hormonal, mentally ill, autistic 13-year-old boy. I started crying when someone took $5 from me, and no matter how I felt about it, I could not stop crying. I cried for about 2 hours. We all traveled together, so I could not opt out. Story 24. I was finally becoming friends with the most popular girl in my class. She sat behind me in math class. My friend in front of me asked for help with a question, so I leaned forward. Unfortunately, I couldn't do math in my head and hold my flatulence, so I accidentally passed gas right in her face. I never spoke to her again. The second time, my teacher asked me in front of the class what I did all night because I yawned and was always tired. Too embarrassed to say I was watching One Tree Hill because it was seen as a girls' show, I said I was watching videos. Story 25. Literally everything. Thank God I was out of high school before social media really exploded. Story 26. I would respond, "Eat me," as a sassy reply. I did not know what eat me meant. High school me was really naive. Story 27. I was a teenager during the height of Jackass, as well as other shows like The Dude Sons and Viva La Bam. My friends and I decided we could be the New Zealand version of Jackass and started filming the dumbest stunt videos. I am lucky that I grew up in a rural area, so we never did any embarrassing prank videos. Also, YouTube was not available yet, so all the videos are lost to time. Story 28. I wore foundation a shade darker than my skin to try to look tanner. I was orange before former President Donald Trump. Story 29. I had a crush on a boy on my street who was 4 years older than me. 12 versus 16. I thought it was a cute idea to tell him I had a crush by writing the lyrics to a Britney Spears song and putting them on his car. I still cringe when I think about it 16 years later. Story 30. God. I wish someone had snatched that hat off my head and set it on fire. Story 31. I was one of those laughing out loud so random people. I wish I could apologize to anyone who knew me then. Story 32. Accidentally saying twink instead of Twix when asking the cashier how much it is. Story 33. Putting on a Chicano accent wannabe chola. I am not even Mexican. Some of my friends could not recognize me over the phone because of the voice. Gags. Story 34. I had a wine-colored velvet cowboy hat that I loved and wore constantly. At a different time, I wore a tiara as a headband for a long while. I also went barefoot for about a year. My school was surprisingly laid back about that, though they had become stricter by the time I graduated. I often walked outdoors downtown where my school was located. I was a unique kid. Story 35. My friends and I videotaped ourselves doing pranks and silly things all the time because we wanted to be the female version of Jackass. Story 36. My teacher asked me to change my shoes. I went to a Catholic school and we were supposed to wear black dress shoes. Apparently, mine were not dressy enough. I wrote her a letter saying that I am a Buddhist and that she was interfering with my education and my path to enlightenment. That was an awkward session with the principal. Story 37. I had a man I was interested in and got his phone number from someone else. Then I texted him, pretending he had texted me first. It worked. We dated for several years. Sorry, that was silly. Story 38. I wore a fake wolf tail on my belt loop with a chain in public. On my first date with my now husband, I sat on a park bench and the chain got stuck in the bench seat's gaps. Story 39. The list of things I did that were not embarrassing would be much shorter. Story 40. I thought the Russian language was really cool, pretended to be able to speak it, and filled my social media account with communist propaganda. Story 41. I wore fake plastic glasses because I wanted real glasses. Story 42. Back in 10th grade, we had to complete a challenge where we were to write an entire novel in 1 month called National Novel Writing Month. We set goals for ourselves, and I was one of only 2 people in my class who set my goal above the minimum, choosing 40,000 words. I wrote a Minecraft fanfiction, 40,000 words of cringe-worthy nonsense. Story 43. I wrote embarrassing Star Trek fanfiction, thinking William Shatner was going to read my nonsense. Story 44. Dad walked in on me using the family back massager on myself. I had locked my door, but it did not click all the way shut. We have never talked about it to this day, and when I remember it, my mind closes in on itself in embarrassment. Story 45. I used to tell girls I love them in high school. I did it twice and went into their classrooms and shouted, "I love you." One time, I had class with a girl I liked, and in the middle of the lecture, I shouted, "I love you," out loud. Yeah, I was way overconfident. Story 46. I cared about what other people thought of me based on my choices at lunch. I could have enjoyed Crispitos to the fullest, but instead I was so concerned about others seeing me eat that I just ate a bland salad, if I ate anything at all. Story 47. I am grateful that social media did not exist when I was a teenager. Story 48. As a skinny white teenager, I went through a phase where I tried to emulate a black American gangster from the neighborhood. I wore double extra large shirts and baggy pants, dressed the part, mimicked their rap style, and adopted their mannerisms. Looking back, it is no surprise that I became a target for teasing and bullying. Trying so hard to be someone I was not made me stand out in all the wrong ways. Story 49. Okay, buckle up. One time, my friend left his email logged in on my computer. I sent him an email from himself, from the future. I detailed things I knew he would be doing that day and told him not to go to that gas station. That's where it all began. Then I left him a riddle. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something like, "Up around the tree, the arrow will see." Years went by. We went to college. When I was about 18, I contacted his brother and told him what I had done. That day, we hacked his email again and sent him another message from himself, one of those timed emails that would appear while we were all together. We then wrote a letter in pen detailing things that would happen in the future, soaked it in coffee to make it look old, and buried it in his backyard inside an old cassette tape. We spray painted an arrow on a tree pointing to the ground where we buried it. He got the email, freaked out, and we all laughed. Later that night, while we were hanging out in his hot tub, I challenged him to a race around the tree. I slipped at the tree, and when he came back, we saw the arrow. We dug up the cassette, and my friend was absolutely freaked out. He carried that note with him for years in his wallet, trying to prevent an awful future. I don't think it really messed with him, but one time when I was a senior in college, we got drunk and were playing Truth or Dare. He dared me to tell him a secret, so I came clean. He still had the note in his wallet. Story 50. I would put my earphones in while having 3 to 4 hour-long concerts in my room, singing and dancing to the songs like I was in a real-life musical. I would choose songs that somewhat related to my life and love life at the time and pretend that my boyfriends or crushes were in front of me while I danced and sang to them. The best part was that my bedroom door was behind me, so I would get caught doing this by my parents all the time. I would turn around mid-performance and see them behind me laughing. Story 51. I once asked Michael Bublé after a concert which one of us would get in trouble if I were to assault him because I was underage but would also be the aggressor. He was very kind about it and handled it well. I thought I was hilarious and edgy. Looking back, I wish someone had stopped me before I could talk to him. Like, "No, bad teenager. Go find your friend's mom's car and let her drive you home." Story 52. I have never told anyone this. In middle school, I wanted to be a vampire so badly. I looked up how to become a vampire on YouTube. Apparently, All you had to do was play the video and listen to the music with a candle lit while alone. Of course, that did not work. I tried it with a witch, then with a werewolf. You thought I had figured it out and it did not work by now? Oh no, absolutely not. I also tried to become a mermaid. Story 53. A little younger than a teenager, around 11 years old, a boy I had a crush on apparently liked to eat chalk, so I gifted him a large chalk variety pack. Story 54. I tried to sing like Billy Corgan in a band. It was so embarrassing. I am sweating as I type this. Story 55. Must have been 7th grade. The two popular girls came into school one day, but they had lost their voices over the weekend. They hung out together and both got sick with the same thing. I pretended to lose my voice too so people would think they secretly hung out with me. When people called me out on it, I doubled down. I hate that memory. Story 56. I wore makeup all the time. I never felt pretty or even normal unless I had a lot of makeup on. Thankfully, that has passed. Story 57. After the boy who took my virginity broke up with me, I used to drive to his house, sit in front of it, and cry. It was an absolutely embarrassing time. I want to smack my 15-year-old self. Story 58. Gay jokes. I was unkind. Cringe is a massive understatement for the things I said all the time back then. Story 59. When I was in the 6th grade, my mom had a huge crush on a Canadian actor named Roy Dupuis. She was in love with him and joked that we were going to move to Canada so she could find him and marry him with one of her girlfriends. I took that seriously. I told everyone I was moving to Canada. Everybody wanted to know me before I moved. The teachers were getting my paperwork together so I could transfer schools easily. Kids kept giving me gift baskets. One day, my mom came into the school and all the teachers said they were sorry to see me go. My mom asked, "Go? She's going to a doctor's appointment. Where do you think she's going? And why are you handing me all of her school papers?" They said, "We thought you were moving to Canada. We figured it was today since you were picking her up." My mom couldn't do anything except burst out laughing, thinking it was the funniest thing she had ever heard. Meanwhile, the rest of the kids were kind of mean when they found out I wasn't actually moving to Canada. Story 60. I was a pick-me girl who wore a full face of makeup every day. I was so annoying, and my makeup looked terrible. Story 61. Met adult men off the internet when I was 15 to 17. I should have been a Dateline episode. Story 62. I had an unhealthy obsession with Jim Morrison, Charles Bukowski, and John Lennon. I was a complicated person to understand back then. Thankfully, I now idolize good people. Story 63. Way late to the party, but an old memory just came up. While watching television in the morning, there was some financial news. I learned about stocks. For a couple of weeks, I carried around an old leather briefcase and pretended I was trading stocks. I was in 5th or 6th grade. I am cringing hard just typing this. Story 64. Trying to fit in. Having crushes and writing all over my journal about how much I love them. Cringe. Story 65. I used to do breakdance and electric boogie in front of a shoe store in a small town. I obviously wore white gloves, neon clothes, and robot shades. Nobody except an old man walking his dog saw it. Story 66. Skip school in the woods to smoke and have sex instead of going to class in 6th grade. Story 67. The better question is, what is something you did as a teenager that does not make you cringe now? Story 68. Oh, I am not even done with my teenage years, and I have some truly embarrassing stuff. Story 69. I was a one-upper. You scored 2 goals, I claimed I scored 4. You got a 94 on your math test? Well, I got a 96. You got new headphones. I have 2 pairs at home I don't even use. When I was about 16, I was at my cousin's house sitting in a hot tub. There were 2 male cousins and 2 girls, friends of theirs, not mine, all around our age. He asked me why I always had to one-up people after I said something about myself, trying to seem better than whatever he had said, thinking it would impress the girls. It suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks that this was a bad thing. It's been decades since that moment, but it still sticks with me anytime someone tells me something awesome about themselves. I now try to cheer them on and tell them how cool it is rather than compete with them. Thank you, cousin. for straightening me out. Story 70. I was a hair away from being an involuntary celibate. Now I am a transgender woman. Turns out all that rage was misdirected. Story 71. I thought I could sing. The number of times I embarrassed myself. Story 72. Pouted around the school halls and streets wearing bedroom slippers, my hair in terrible pigtails, my eyes heavily lined, my jeans skin tight. Story 73. Most of my posts on Facebook. I get reminded about them every year, but at this point, it only makes me laugh. Story 74. So many oops. I accidentally sent you this message you should not have seen. Story 75. Brush my dry hair because I did not know I had curly hair. Story 76. Not calling out my male friends for being disrespectful when talking about girls. As soon as I became aware, I started confronting them. Let's just say we don't talk anymore, and I have a much better group of friends now. Story 77. I was active in toxic radical feminist circles on Tumblr and was actively transphobic. I turned to feminism at a time when I really needed to connect with women-focused spaces, and I led myself down a harmful path blaming others for problems that were ultimately my responsibility to heal from. I regret it deeply and try to move forward with my mouth shut and my ears open. I hate to think about how many people I harmed in my misguided attempts to find community. Story 78. When I was in middle school, I joined a lowrider car club, started building my lowrider bike, and dressed like a cholo. I have a little bit of Spanish and Mexican heritage, but not enough for the way I was dressing and acting. I grew up in a trailer park and was obsessed with Harley Davidson. Suddenly, I became obsessed with being a cholo, completely losing touch with myself, thinking I was cool since I was no longer the weird kid. Now, when I think about it, I cringe and wish I had stayed true to myself. Story 79. I linked arms with this man, and he rejected it quickly. I pretended to steal his phone out of embarrassment, but he still did not get the hint. How did he genuinely think I wanted his phone? Story 80. I made an online friend when I just discovered I was gay. We really hit it off and agreed to meet at my house. When she was telling me about her recent breakup with her long-term boyfriend, I started to stare at her with an "I want to eat you" face and got really close to her, fully thinking I was about to kiss her and have a love story. I got awkward, so I didn't do anything. Years later, she thanked me for being a respectful friend who appreciated her as a good friend only and never had sexual intentions like some of her other friends. Remembering me making that face really makes me cringe. She is now back with her boyfriend, and I love her very much as an amazing friend only. Story 81. Pretended to like boys to fit in. I genuinely was not aware yet that I liked girls, but I was pretty aware that my crushes were forced. Story 82. Driving well over 100 miles per hour on residential city streets with a 30 miles per hour speed limit, way too many times, is unimaginably dangerous to innocent people. God must have intervened. That is my only explanation. That is why nobody was ever injured or worse. Story 83. Every year at high school football camp, we did something called skit night. Teams were made up by the coaches, and we all competed with skits and dancing. Freshmen had to do a song. It was very fun with very few rules. Basically, nothing was off the table. It was my senior year and my group was not very good. I had never been a skit person, and since I was a senior, putting together the skit was my main responsibility. It was the biggest category of skit night, obviously. My group had none of the funny kids, so coming up with a funny skit was difficult. The skit we eventually created was basically a roast of one particular kid. Let's call him John. John was one of my best friends. His younger brother was in my group, so that's how this idea came to be. We just made a skit of his life and roasted him. His brother played a caricature of him in the sketch. At the time, we thought, impersonation is a form of flattery. We're doing this because we love him, and just boys being boys. The skit was very mean. We performed it in front of the whole team and coaches. Nobody really laughed. We could see John's face in the crowd, and he looked very sad. His brother and I quickly realized how mean the whole thing was. After skit night, John looked defeated for the next couple of days. One of the coaches told me, I wish your group had done something a little different with the skit. To this day, that has to be one of the meanest things I have ever done in my life. Every time I think about it, I get a big cringe and can't shake the terrible feeling. Thankfully, 9 years later, John is still one of my best friends, as is his brother. All three of us talked about this recently and laughed about it. John's brother and I both expressed how disappointed we were in ourselves and how terrible we felt about the whole thing. He forgave us. Story 84. Probably like everything, to be honest. If you are not cringing at your old self, you probably did not grow much as a person. Story 85. I once asked a girl out over Snapchat but got too scared to talk to her in person at school. She started dating someone else the next day. Story 86. Ran like those ninjas in Naruto. Mimed as if I was doing the Rasengan or Kamehameha. Climbed up the stairs on all four limbs. Well, great now. I am just going through all the memories I would have liked to forget. Story 87. Try to make friends at school. I was such an outcast that even other academically focused students wanted nothing to do with me. Story 88. My style sense comes to mind. As a female, I wore those ridiculously baggy jeans with skate shop t-shirts. I did not skate. I dyed my blonde hair black and wore black eyeliner completely covering the eyelids. I pretended I was a vampire and asked people if I could suck their blood. Story 89. In middle school, I used to wear cat ears and a cat tail all the time, which earned me the nickname Cat Girl, until graduation. Story 90. I staged photo shoots of my own autopsy, then posted them online with sad song lyrics to convey to a boy I was dating my general heartache over our on-off relationship for 2.5 years. One still exists on DeviantArt, I think. Story 91. I used to write teenage angsty poetry, expressing that my life and parents were bad. In reality, I had a nice teenage life with hardworking parents who loved me, always supported me, and tried to give my brother and me a good life. I miss them. They are not dead. I just live abroad. Story 92. Handed my crush a letter saying I like him around 2018 and ran away so fast that I jumped over the last 4 steps on the stairs. Story 93. Some of the things I said to describe myself as a flaky, gullible, dumb teenager do not fully capture it. It is as if I was raised without guidance and did not know how to communicate like a typical person. Sometimes I had no filter and I am horrified by much of it. Story 94. When I was 16, I had a quilt that I drew on and had all my friends write and sign it. It was awful, but that was not the worst part. On one patch, I wrote, "Life is like a dick. When it gets hard, forget it." I also added other assorted insightful quotes and lyrics. I used to play drums, so I included fantasy band names as well, like Lush PHYXX and Adam's Fall. Jesus. Story 95. Literally everything. I am almost grateful there are very few people left who would remember my strange self. Story 96. My Twilight stationery. Pencil case, pens, ruler, folders, and more. Story 97. Oh God. I liked this girl who wasn't interested in me and then started dating a senior while we were sophomores. I still didn't get the hint until one day he texted me from her phone, and then we stopped even being friends. Since then, I have realized and heard from friends that our mutual friend liked me, and she was awesome and very attractive. I was completely in love with that girl and blinded to anyone else. I wonder if I had known that, would I have done anything differently? Story 98. I was really into faux hawks and at one point ended up with a really sturdy hair gel that also made my hair blue. Then one day, I had the brilliant idea to style it from my right temple to the left side of my neck. So, I had a crooked blue faux hawk and thought I was so cool for going against the grain. Story 99. I had a difficult conversation with the teacher when I was 16 or 17 years old. Story 100. When I was under 18 and could not buy cigarettes, I would find half-smoked cigarettes on the ground to have my turn with them. Story 101. Cried a lot because, even though I was cringe, I never believed in the supernatural. Knowing I could never become a vampire, like in Twilight, and live my best immortal life made me distraught. A few years later, in 2011, I cried because I couldn't date my favorite Korean pop boy. Laughing my ass off. Story 102. I have two stories, both related to social media. I've always been insecure about my looks and, as a teenager, my popularity. I started Instagram at a young age, which led me to compare myself to other girls my age. Story 1. In middle school, most of us got our first smartphones. Since preteens are young and inexperienced, the first thing many did was post a picture of their phone on Instagram and ask everyone to share their numbers in the comments. We didn't realize how unsafe that was at our age. When I was 12, I got an iPhone 6 and was ecstatic. Right after I got home, I took a picture of the phone box and wrote numbers for the caption. Nobody commented. Story 2. This was also in middle school. I have always felt insecure about my appearance and lacked confidence. One day, feeling pretty in my stage makeup, I was a theater kid. I took a selfie and posted it on my page. The cringy part was the caption. One more pic because I look really pretty with this stage makeup on. Story 103. Wear 6 bracelets. I was in middle school and did not need to be doing that at all. Story 104. Good thing I got hit by a car because I don't remember anything. I was probably just trying to fit in and have friends. That was embarrassing. Story 105. Sometimes, I would sleep with those really small pillow curlers in and take them out before school, leaving me with a massive afro. I have really long hair and a relatively small head, so it just looked absolutely ridiculous on me. I know it did, but I did not really care. Anyway, it makes me cringe now. Story 106. I made superficial cuts on my arm and showed them to everyone for attention. Story 107. I have some pretty terrible tattoos of bands I listened to years ago. I got them at 17 because I believed I would never change or grow old. I am 40 now, and that makes me cringe. Story 108. I grew my hair out to donate to charity and was absolutely obsessed with ninjas and samurais after watching The Last Samurai. I used to carry my katana around the house all the time. I was a very nerdy white teenage boy. Story 109. I would make up lies about myself to seem cooler and more interesting to other kids. It was a desperate move because I just wanted friends and people to talk to me. Unfortunately, I was a bad liar and it backfired badly. Story 110. We delayed the development of a new neighborhood for at least 5 years because they bulldozed our favorite bike jumps. It's been long enough, so I admit we caused significant damage to equipment and supplies. We filled the gas tanks of a few bulldozers with sugar, pulled out the survey stakes at least 3 times and smashed them all. We ran from security and the police and never got caught. Yikes, I cringed typing it out. Story 111. When I was about 13, I had no idea about the Nazis yet, and I doodled a giant swastika right outside my history book. I thought the symbol looked cool. My father covered it as soon as he noticed, and the man who was going to be my history teacher for that year explained it to me. I was carrying that large swastika around for about 3 weeks before they noticed. Story 112. I did my eye makeup like the Crow or the twins from Good Charlotte almost every day. I used eyeliner and purple hair dye very quickly. Story 113. I used to keep a blog and write in a very cutesy way using many emoticons and emojis such as greater than, underscore, less than or greater than, slash, less than. Reading it back now makes me cringe at the way I wrote. Story 114. I was obnoxious at the movies, talking, giggling, and mouthing off when confronted. If I were ever able to go back in time to punish myself for something, I would slap myself for that. Self-centered little person. What the heck? Story 115. I thought being a total jerk and being edgy was the way to get people to like me. I said horrible things and did stupid stuff all the time to get a reaction from whoever I was talking to. Friend likes a band? No, they are not cool, and so is my friend because he likes that band. Girl I think is cute. I had to treat her badly so she would fall for me, which almost never worked. I constantly got into fights with my friends over the dumbest things like music. Between 2007 and 2013, if you came across me, there was a 99.5% chance I would have treated you poorly just because I thought that was the cool and fun thing to do. I have only recently, for about a year now, realized I suffered from a disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment style. It was not until I went to therapy that I realized I was trying to copy my best friend's personality, trying to be what I thought my dad wanted me to be, and also dismissing my true personality, burying it beneath those influences. This, among other things, caused me to have a breakdown in 2014, and I did not fully recover until 2018. But I really wish I could go back and just slap myself. Story 116. Being in anime roleplay, scenes back in MySpace days as Sakura Haruno from Naruto or Kikyo from Inuyasha. Also, back when YouTube felt more like a second MySpace with the ability to comment on YouTube channels, I had a YouTube family list that included a mom, dad, siblings, slaves, cousins, husbands, rivals, and others. Oh, how I miss the mid-2000s. Story 117. Aloof chase tan homeless cow employ physical kiss roof puzzled. Story 118. I invited a girl to my friend's party. She rejected me, which made me cry. I spent the night feeling aroused while she comforted me. Story 119. Just being really mean. I thought I was so cool and aloof, but honestly, I was just a jerk. Story 120. Begged for a boy's attention when I deserved much better. Story 121. Well, I tried to witness to everyone as a Christian, argue for creationism in science class, and wrote every paper I could on the subject of Christianity. I was also in a young Republicans group. To be fair, I grew up in a megachurch and lived in Orange County, California, so this was actually the norm. My entire high school basketball team behaved like being a Christian was a prerequisite, and we went to youth group together. But today, I am a pagan, leftist, science-believing feminist. I scroll down and we are doing specific things, huh? Oh well, I misunderstood the assignment. My friend and I went to Home Depot on an errand with my dad, and loudly pretended to be dumb girls. In the hardware aisle, we found the nails and asked someone, "Do you also have acrylics?" We thought we were very funny. Story 122. Wore a fake chain and pinky ring, a bull's hat when I lived nowhere near Chicago. Walked around wearing a sleeveless undershirt and sagged my pants purposefully. I thought I was so cool. Nowadays, I am the complete opposite. I just throw on whatever fits and does not smell. Story 123. I tried hard to be funny in school. Once in a while, I would say something that was actually funny, but the good jokes were often buried among many annoying and cringeworthy ones in class. Story 124. Senior year, I tried to sign as many classmates' yearbooks as possible. I was not popular, so this was awkward on its own. However, I decided to write completely random, nonsensical things each time. Story 125. I thought I was going to be a songwriter. I recently came across my old songbook. They were so cheesy and cringy. Like, honey, no, stop, just stop. Story 126. It was middle school and some kid asked me on a date. I said I was moving to Iceland so we couldn't date. Why didn't I just say no? Story 127. I'm just glad that when I was a teenager, people could not even post photos on the internet. It wasn't even possible. And no, I'm not that old, just old enough that internet chat query was the chat line. Story 128. I used to tell my teachers that my favorite number was 69 very confidently, might I add. At the time, I did not know what it represented and just knew it was a taboo number. Every time I think about it, I get flashbacks of embarrassment. Story 129. Growled at people before COVID-19, 2010 to 2016 approximately. Wore a tail to school every day. Wore a black duster because I loved the Dresden Files. Would play fight with a friend of mine like we were wolves, we had a territory and everything. We are still friends now. I could go on. Story 130. Fell hard for the wrong kind of girls or became too emotionally attached to them to fill a deep void inside myself. Story 131. I thought I was a Christian and a Republican. I was extremely committed to both. Story 132. We played monster beer pong. I cringe. Edit. Oh, and we thought you were supposed to bounce the ball once before it went into the cups. Story 133. Adding Z0 are to the end of words and adding capitals to the start of every word. Story 134. Posting too much information online, including any thoughts that pass through my mind. Often the woe is me type. Story 135. Wrote a bunch of awkward poems and sent them directly to my friends. Story 136. I would make fake celebrity pages. One of them was Miley Cyrus. I thought the other celebrities I was friends with on Facebook and Instagram were real. I thought Justin Bieber really liked me. Story 137. Oh God. I was the candy kid of high school. I wore the scene tutus too. I was a bit more in the hardcore scene though, but I was in competition with another candy kid who came from a different middle school. She knew Vanity, and I used to be MySpace friends with Jeffree Star. I made candy for people. To be honest, I was really good at it and even made customized candy for people on eBay and Etsy after I graduated. It wasn't very PLUR of me to make it profitable, but whatever, I was broke. Anyway, that girl cyberbullied me so hard I took screenshots of all of it, gave them to the principal and got her suspended. Story 138. Reading what some of you were like makes me not hate myself so much. When I was 17, an Italian pageant girl exchange student dumped me to go back home. I cried for 6 days straight, wrote a poem about it, and gave it to her on the last day of school. Story 139. I used to hang out downtown as a 13-year-old with my friend, who was 13 dating 17. We thought we were so cool. Now it just is creepy. Story 140. Tried to make viral videos for YouTube back in the early 2000s. We did silly things like use clear tape to stick cheap blueberry muffins to our foreheads and then headbutt a window to see what it would look like. Or make duct tape Pikachu ears, stick them in our hair, and throw foam pokeballs at each other to try to knock the ears off. Or crawl into plastic barrels and roll them downhill to race each other. Many of those old videos have since been deleted. Story 141. Being in a pick-me, I am so not like other girls phase. Wearing baggy clothes, putting down anything feminine, and not being friends with girls because all they do is makeup and gossip, and I can't handle their drama. Being emo when my first boyfriend broke up with me. I did not get over him for years. Facebook statuses and pictures with captions. I was so cringe. Story 142. Being so dramatic, I thought everything was the worst thing that could ever happen to me, especially crying a lot about boys. Wearing tank tops so tight that my boobs would pop out. Overplucked my eyebrows. They were so thin. I had to do it every day to keep up because I have really thick brows on my own. I cringe at every photo now. Having a nail piercing, I thought I was so cool and edgy. But honestly, I would wear them again if it was accepted. Story 143. When I was 13, my crush liked Twilight. Not a lot, just a little. I became obsessed with it and had a Twilight picture tucked in the front of my binder. All because I thought I would impress her. It did not work. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.